Namah Parvati Pate Hara 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 Jaya Sadaguru Bhagavan Muktananda Mahadaguru Bhagavan Jaya Sadaguru 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 Bhagavan Jaya Sachidananda Guru Sahasrakoti Yugadarine Namah. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murtaye Nij Prapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Nityanandaya Gurave Shisha Samsararine Kadehaya Namaste Chitsadatmane Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunatu Vahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti 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 Om Namo Gurubhyo Guru Padukabhyo Namah Parevya Harapadukabhya Acharya Siddhi Harapadukabhyo Shri Guru Padukabhya Enkara Rimka Rarasya Yukta Shrimkara Gura Tama Vibhutya Omkara Marma Pratipadivyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Otra Vyocha Vakriti Vasamanam Yad Brahma Tadvut Ravitarinidhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Amari Sarva Prajagarudabhyam Viveka Vaira Yaniri Pradabhyam Bora Pradabhyam Dhrutam Mokshadabhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Ananta Samsara Rasamudra Tara Naukaitabhyam Stira Bhakti Dabhyam Jaryati Samsho Sharavaravabhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Om Shanti 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 Om Asya Shri Guru Gita Stotra Mantrasya Bhagavan Sada Shiva Rishi Nana Vidani Chandamsi Shri Guru Paramatma Devata Ambijam Sashaktigram Tilakam Shri Guru Prasara Siddhyarte Jape Viniyoga Ata Dhyanam Savyam Varivrita Patra Kamale Divya Jagattarane Vishwakirna Manekade Anilaye Vachandamam Nechaya Tadyotam Parashambhavam Charanam Deepankura Grahinam Vikram Guru Param विनियोगा सुता उवाचा कैलासशिखरे रम्ये भक्तिसन्धारनायकम् प्रणम्य पार्वती भक्त्या शङ्करं पायपृच्छति श्रीदेवी उवाच ॐ नमो देवदेवेश परपर जगद्गुरो सदाशिव महादेव गुरुदीक्षं प्रदेहि मे येन मार्गेण वो स्वामी देहि ब्रह्मं मयो भवे स्वामी नमामि चरणौ तव ईश्वर उवाच ममारुपासि देवी त्वं त्वत्प्रीत्यर्थं वदाम्यहं लोकोपकारकः प्रश्नो न केनापि कृतः पुरा दुर्लभं त्रिषु लोकेषु तत्तुरुष्वावदाम्यहं गुरुविना ब्रह्मणा सत्यं सत्यं वरानने वेदशास्त्रपुराणानि इतिहासादिकानि च मन्त्रयन्त्रादिविद्याश्च स्मृतिरुचातनारिकाम् शैवशाक्तागमादीनि अन्यानि विविराणि च अपभ्रंशकराणि जीवानां प्रन्तते च साम् यज्ञो व्रतं तपोदानं जपस्तीर्थं च देवशा गुरुतपमविज्ञाय पुरस्ते चरते जनाः गुरुपुर्यं मनोनन्यात् सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः तदर्थं प्रयाणास्तु कर्तव्यो हि मनीषिभिः पुरविद्या जगन्माया ते च ज्ञानसम्भवा उदयो या प्रकाशेन गुरुशब्देन कथ्यते सर्वपापविषिदात्मा ते ब्रह्म भवेर्यस्मात् स्वकृपार्थं वदामि ते गुरुपरं भुजं स्मृत्वा जलं शिरसिधारये सर्वतीर्थभगास्य सम्प्रप्नोति फलं नरात् अङ्गस्य दीपनं ज्ञानतेजसां गुरुपरोरकं सम्यक् संसारानवतारकम् अज्ञानमूलारणं जन्मकर्मानिवारणं ज्ञानवैराग्यसिद्ध्यर्थं गुरुपरोरकं पिबेत् गुरुपरोरकं पीत्वा गुरुरुशिष्टभोजनं गुरुमूर्ते सराध्यानं गुरुमन्त्रं सदा जपेत् काशीशेषं च निवासो जानवी चरणोरकं गुरुविश्वेश्वर साक्षात् तारकं ब्रह्मनिश्चितम् रकं यातु गायसोक्षयोवचः तीर्थराज प्रयागश्च गुरुमूर्ते नमो नमः गुरुमूर्तिं स्मरे नित्यं गुरुनामासराजपे गुरुरञ्जं प्रकुर्वीता गुरुरज्ञानभावये गुरुवक्त्रसितं ब्रह्म प्राप्यते ताप्रसादतः गुरुज्ञानं सदा कुर्यात् तुलसी स्वापतिर्यता स्वाशमं च स्वजन्तीं च कार्कीर्ति पुष्टिवर्धनम् हरित्याज गुरुरज्ञानभावये अनन्यश्चिन्तयन्तो मां सुलभं परमं परां तस्मात् सर्वप्रयत्नेन गुरुराराधनं कुरु Sadgurubhyo Nivedaya Mikita Vasmavista Durgani Malamuchakam Seshmarakam Sachamam Sam Vanchayena Varanane Samsara Vrukshamaruta Antantonara Karnave Yenam Seva Drita Sarve Tasme Shri Gurave Namah Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Brahma Tasme Shri Gurave Namah Eta Veda Gatameva Samsaranavasetave Prabhave Sarva Vidyanam Shambhave Gurave Namah Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnanajana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Tvam Pita Tvam Cha Me Mata Tvam Bandhu Tvam Cha Devata Samsara Pratigorartam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yat Satyena Jagat Satyam Ya Prakashena Bhatitat Yaranandena Nandanti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Sitya Satyamina Yavati Vanarupata Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vena Chetayate Idam Chetam Chetayate Nayam Jagratapna Shishupyari Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Dhyanadidam Vishwam Nadrisham Veera Verata Sare Karuparupaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Matam Tasya Matam Matam Yasya Navedasa Ananya Bhava Bhavaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Karana Rupasya Karya Rupena Bhatiyat Karya Karana Rupaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Niram Sarvam Nakinapyasti Vinata Karya Karana Tacheva Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Yarangri Kamala Dvamvam Dvamvam Varakam Varakam Sarvarapapyam Shri Gurum Varanamyam Shivekvite Gurushtata Guru Krude Shivonai Tasman Sarva Prayanena Shri Gurum Sharanam Raje Vande Guru Paradvamvam Vammanashchitta Gocharam Shvetarakta Prabhavinam Shiva Shaktya Makambaram Rukaram Cha Gunajitam Rukaram Rupavarjitam Gunatita Svarupam Sha Yoradyatsa Guru Smrta Atrinetra Sarva Sakshi Achatur Bhaurakshita Brahma Shri Guru Katita Priye Ayam Ayanjalir Bhado Daya Sagara Vrittaye Yajanugrato Jantu Chitra Samsara Mukti Bhav Shri Guru Paramamrup Viveka Chakshushamritam Mandapajnana Pashyanti Manda Suryodayam Yata Srinatacharana Dhamvam Yasyam Dishi Virajate Tasye Dishe Namaspurya Bhaktya Pratidinam Priye Satatam Anjale Shanatana Nitya Sakshi Srinatari Gurutrayam Ganapati Nitatrayam Viravam Siddhokam Bhatukatrayam Varayukam Yutekamam Mandalam Nirandrashtata Srishta Sashti Navakam Viravali Panchakam Simmamalini Mandra Raja Saitam Vande Guru Mandalam Yate Sakale Sujirna Manile Yadi Prarir Dushkare Pranayama Sakera Nikakarane Dukatmake Durjaye Yasmin Abhidite Vinashati Balim Vayu Swayam Takshana Taptum Tatsatam Svabhava Manisham Sevadvame Kam Gurum Swareshika Sheva Sharira Chintanam Shivasha Chintanam Swareshika Sheva Shanama Kirtanam Bhavedana Tasya Shivasha Kirtanam Yappararenu Kanika Kapi Samsara Varide Setu Bandhayate Natam Deshikam Tam Upasmaye Yasmadanuklam Lavam Karadhyana Mutraje Tasme Shire Shikendraya Namashabhishta Siddhaye Bharatam Sava Samsara Davana Lavinashakam Brahmarandre Sitam Bhoja Madhya Samchandra Mandale Akatari Tire Kabje Sahasradala Mandale Smare Madhya Gam Guru Sakala Bhuvana Shrishti Kalpita Shesha Pushti Nikila Nigama Drishti Samvaram Vyartha Drishti Avaguna Parimarshti Tapparartheka Drishti Avaguna Parameshti Moksha Margeka Drishti Sakala Bhuvana Ranga Sapana Sambayasti Sakaruna Rasa Vrishti Tatvamala Samasti Sakala Samaya Shrishti Sachirananda Drishti Nivasatu Maya Nityam Shri Guru Divya Drishti Agni Siddhar Samam Tatu Dvala Parichakariya Mandra Raja Mimam Manye Arni Sampatam Mrityuta Kare Jati Tane Jati Tadure Tatsamipake Tarantarasya Sarvasya Taru Sarvasya Vayata Ajoham Ajaroham Sha Anadini Dhanasvayam Avikara Shirananda Aniyam Matoman Apurvanam Param Nityam Swayam Jyotir Niramayam Virajam Paramakasham Dhruvamanandam Avyayam Gurave Namah. Samarudastadvamala vibhushitam Mukti Mukti Pradatayas Asmai Shri Gurave Namah. Aneka Jama Samprapta Sarva Karma Vidayine Swapmagyana Prabhavena Asmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nagurorarikam Tattvam Nagurorarikam Tapa Tattvam Jnanam Param Nasti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Manata Shri Jagannatha Madguru Shri Jagadguru Mama Sarva Bhutatma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jnanamulam Guru Murti Mantramulam Guru Vakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Guru Radhira Narishta Guru Param Devatam Guru Parataram Nasti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sapta Sagara Padayanta Tirtha Snanadikam Phalam Guru Rangri Payo Bindu Sasam Shena Durlabham. Arurushte Guru Shraddha Guru Rushtena Kashana Tasmat Sarva Prayanena Shri Guru Sharanam Vrade. Guru Reva Jagat Sarva Brahma Vishnu Shivatmakam Samnasti Tasmat Sampujaya Guru. Jnana Vijnana Sahitam Labhyate Guru Bhaktitam Guru Parataram Nasti Deyo So Guru Margivi. Tasmat Parataram Nasti Neti Neti Tivestiti Manasavacha Sacheva Nityamara Dayet Gurum. Guru Kripa Prasadena Brahma Vishnu Sarashiva Samartha Prabhavadocha Kevalam Guru Sevaya. Devakina Ragandharva Hitaro Yaksha Charana Guru Shushushane Vidim Mahankara Garbena Tapavidya Balambitam Samsara Kuara Varte Tattayantre Yatagatam Amukha Deva Gandharva Itaro Yaksha Kinnara Vishaya Sarva Siddhascha Guru Seva Paramaka. Jnanam Shunu Mahadevi Sarvananda Pradayakam Nityam Mukti Mukti Vidayakam. Sriman Parabrahma Gurum Smarami Sriman Parabrahma Gurum Varami Sriman Parabrahma Gurum Namami Sriman Parabrahma Gurum Bhajami. Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurti Vadvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Laksham. Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunaraitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Nityam Shudam Nirabhasam Nirakaram Niranjanam Nandam Guru Brahma Namamyam. Dambuje Karnikam Madhya Samste Jaye Gurum Chandra Kala Prakasham Vipustaka Vishtabaram Dharanam Shvetambaram Shvetavilepa Pushpam Mukta Vibhusha Muritam Trinetram Ramakam Vidya Sitya Divya Shakti Mandasmitam Sandratam Paniranam Anandamaranandakaram Prasanam Jnana Swarupam Nijapura Yuktam Srimad Guru Nityam Am Namami Yasmit Srishti Chitido Amsam Nigra Nugra Makam Kuntyam Pancha Viram Shashvat Basatetam Namamyam Rata Shira Shishuklabje Vinitvam Dvibhujam Guru Parabhaya Yutam Shantam Smaretam Nama Purvakam Nagurorarikam Nagurorarikam Shiva Shasanata Shiva Shasanata Shiva Shasanata Virameva Shivam Trinameva Shivam Virameva Shivam Trinameva Shivam Mama Shasanato Mama Shasanato Mama Shasanato Mama Shasanata Evam Vedam Gurum Yatva Jnanam Upadyate Swayam Tat Sadguru Prasadena Muktamiti Bhavaye Guru Darshita Margena Manashurim Tukaraye Anityam Kandaye Sarvam Yakim Chintatma Gocharam Eyam Sarva Sarupam Sha Jnanam Cha Manuchyate Nanya Panta Dvitiyaka Evam Shubha Mahadevi Gurumitam Karotiya Sayati Narakaram Yava Chandra Divakaro Yava Kalpan Chakodeha Stava Deva Gurum Smare Guru Lopam Kartavya Sachando Yaribhabave Omkarena Navaktavyam Agneshi Shekatanchana Gururagrena Vaktavyam Asatyam Shakarachana Gurum Swankrityam Kritya Gurum Nirjitya Varata She Sabhave Brahma Rakshasa Muni Pipana Girvapi Sureva Shapito Yari Kala Mrityu Vayat Bhakti Guru Rakshati Parvati Ashaktai Suradyasha Ashakta Munaya Sutta Guru Shapena Te Shigram Jayam Yanti Na Samshaya Mantra Raja Miram Devi Guru Rityakshara Dvayam Smurti Mera Tavakyena Guru Sakshat Paramparam Shruti Smurti Avinyaya Kevalam Guru Sevaka Eve Sanyasina Prokta Nitareve Shatarina Nityam Brahma Nirakaram Nirgunam Dhoraye Param Abhasam Dipanjaram Yata Guru Kripa Prasadena Akmaram Annirikshaye Anina Guru Margena Svapmakyanam Pravartate Abrahmastava Padyantam Paramamasurupakam Stavaram Jagamam Sheva Pranamami Jaganmayam Vandeyam Sanchiranandam Verati Nirakaram Nirgunam Swamasansitam Paraparataram Vyayam Nityam Nandakarakam Hridaya Kashamadhyastam Sudasvatikananivam Svatika Pratimarupam Drishyate Darpane Yatha Tatamani Chirakaram Anandam Sonnithyutam Angushtamatra Purusham Dayatastim Mayam Pradi Tatra Spurati Bhavoya Chanutam Katayam Yam Chagamyam Namarupa Vivarjitam Nishabdam Vichaniyan Swabhavam Brahma Parvati Yata Kanda Swabhavena Karpura Kusumarishu Shikdoshnari Swabhavena Tata Brahma Shashvatam Swayam Tata Vido Bhutva Saptamyam Yantra Kudrachi Chitta Brahma Ravatatra Jnanam Bhavati Chadrusham Guru Jnanam Tata Kritva Swayam Brahmamayo Bhave Vinde Pare Tata Rupe Mukto Sonatra Samshaya Shri Parvati Uvacha Mahadeva Param Kim Samadarutam Rupatitam Sarvam Kim Edadatyai Shankara Shri Mahadeva Uvacha Vindam Kundalini Shakti Paramam Samadarutam Rupam Binduritiyeyam Rupatikam Niranjanam Vinde Mukta Pare Mukta Rupe Mukta Varanane Se Mukta Natra Samshaya Swayam Sarvamayo Bhutva Param Dhamam Vilokaye Paraparat Tasya Valokanam Prapya Savasanta Vivarjita Ekakinishvara Shantas Tishtadeta Prasadata Ladamba Tana Ladamba Sabbaba Baulam Chata Nishkamineva Bhoktavyam Sada Santushtate Chasa Sarvagnya Paramnityahur Dehi Sarvamayo Buddha Karananda Sadashanto Yamate Atmaputrati Ratre Bhakti Shtate Sopi Sadesha Punya Bhajanam Muktasya Lakshanam Devi Avagre Kartikam Maya Upadesha Stata Devi Guru Margena Muktida Guru Bhakti Satadhyanam Samalata Kirtitam Anenaya Bhave Karyam Bhavadam Imamate Lokopakarakam Devi Lokikam Tunabhavaye Lokika Karmano Yanti Jnanahina Bhavarnavam Jnani Tu Bhavaye Sarvam Karma Irish Karma Yatkritam Idam Tu Bhakti Bhavena Bhatate Shunate Yari Likit Bhakta Paratamyam Tat Sarvam Safalam Bhave Guru Gita Makam Devi Bhava Pyari Vinashartam Swayameva Jape Sada Guru Gita Ksare Kantam Mantra Rajami Manjape अन्ये च विविधा मन्त्राः फलं नार्हन्ति षोडशीम् अनन्तफलमनोचि गुरुगीता जपेन तु सर्वपापशमनम् सर्वदारिद्र्यनाशनम् कालमृत्युभयारम् यक्षरक्षसमुत्थानम् चोरव्याघ्रभयापहम् आव्यारिहरं सर्वं विभूतिसिरिदं भवेत् आत्ममोहनं वश्यं स्वयमेव जपे सदा कष्टस्थाने च दारिद्र्यं वशने रोगसम्भवः मेदिन्यं दुःखमनोति कष्टे भवति निष्फलम् कृष्णाजने यानसिद्धिर् मोक्षसे त्यागकर्मणि कुशासने यानसिद्धिः सर्वसिरुष्टुकम्बले कुशेवा दुर्वया देवी आसने शुभ्रकम्बले उपविश्य ततो देवी तपेते ग्रागमानसा देयं शुक्लं च शान्त्यर्थं काशीरकासनं प्रिये अभिचारे कृष्णवर्णं पीतवर्णं धनागमे उत्तरे शङ्खमस्तु काशे पूर्वमुखो जपे दक्षिणे मारणं प्रोक्तं पश्चिमे च धनागमः मोहनं सर्वभूतानां बन्धमोक्षकरं भवेत् देवराजप्रियकरं सर्वलोकवशं भवेत् सर्वेषां स्तम्भनकरं गुणनं च विवर्धनं दुष्कर्मनाशनं चैव सुकर्मसिद्धिं भवेत् आसीदं साधये कार्यं नवग्रहभयापहं दुःस्वप्ननाशनं चैव दुःस्वप्नफलदायकम् सर्वशान्तिकरं नित्यं सततव्यासपोषणम् अभेदव्याकरं श्रीणां सौभाग्यदायकं सदा आयुरारोगमेश्वर्यं पुत्रपौत्रवर्धनम् अकामता श्रीविरावा जपमोक्षमवाप्नुयात् अभेदव्यं सकामात् लभते चन्यजन्मनि सर्वदुःखभयं विघ्नं नाशये च पारकम् सर्वबाधाप्रशमनं धर्मतकाममोक्षदं यं यं चिन्तयते कामान् तं च प्राप्नोति निश्चितम् अमितस्य कामधेनु कल्पना कल्पपारपा चिन्तामणि श्रीतस्य सर्वमङ्गलकारकम् मोक्षहेतुर्जपे नित्यं मोक्षश्रेयामवाप्नुयात् योगकामो जपे द्योवे तस्य कामफलप्रदम् ज्ञानपद्यष्णवैष्णवा सेवाशास्त्रिदं देवी सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः आतकाम्य जपे स्थानं कथयामि वरानने सागरे वा सरितीरे अथवारिहरालये शक्तिदेवालये गोष्ठे सर्वदेवालयेषु मे पचेतदात्रिमूले वा माते वृन्दावने च पवित्रे निर्मले स्थाने नित्यानुष्ठानचोभिवा निर्वेदने नमोनेन जपामि तं समाचरे वृक्षा ससानिर गुरुपुत्र वरमूर्तस्य सिद्ध्यन्तिनन्यथा कर्माणि सर्वाणि दीक्षावृत्ता तपंसि च संसारमलनाशर्त भावपाशानिवृत्तये गुरुगीतामसि स्नानं तद्भाग्या कुरुते सदा स एव च गुरुसाक्षात् सदा स ब्रह्मवित्तमा तस्य स्थानानि सर्वाणि पवित्राणि न संशयः सर्वशुद्ध पवित्रः अभवद्य प्रतिष्ठति क्षेत्रेऽपि ते वसन्ति आसनस्थशयानो वा गच्छन्तं वरानपि अश्वरूढो गजारूढः चित्तो वा जागृतोऽपि वा सरध्याने गुरुगीता जपेन च तस्य दर्शनमात्रेण पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते समुद्रे च यथा तोयं क्षीरक्षीरं वृथे कृतं दिने कुम्भे यथाकाशात् तथात्मा परमात्मनि तथैवाद्यानि जीवात्मा परमात्मानि लीयते ऐक्येन रमते ज्ञानी यत्र तत्र दिवानिशाम् एवं विदो महामुक्तः सर्वदा वर्तते बुधः तस्य सर्वप्रयत्नेन भावभक्तिं करोति यः सर्वसन्देहरहितो मुक्तो भवति पार्वती मुक्तिद्वयं तस्य शिवाग्रे च सरस्वती गुरुगीता जपेन च सर्वसिद्धिं प्राप्नुवन्ति मुक्तिं न संशयः सत्यं सत्यं पुनः सत्यं धर्मं सत्यं मयोरितं गुरुगीता समं नास्ति सत्यं सत्यं वरानने एको देव एक धर्म एकनिष्ठा परं च गुरुपरतरं नान्यत् नास्ति तत्त्वं गुरुपरम् माता धन्य पिता धन्यो धन्यो वा शाकुलं च धन्य च वसु शरीरमिन्द्रियं प्राणश्च छर्दस्वजानबन्धवः माता पिता कुलं देवी गुरुरेव आकल्पा जन्मना कोट्या जपव्रता तपाक्रिया तत्सर्वं सफलं देवी गुरुसन्तोषमातृका विद्याचापो बलेनैव मन्दभाग्याश्रये नरः गुरुसेवां न कुर्वन्ति सत्यं सत्यं वरानने ब्रह्म विष्णु महेशाश्च देवर्षि पितृकिन्नरः सिद्धाचारण यक्षाश्च अनेके मुनयो जनाः गुरुभाव परं तीर्थम् अन्यतीर्थं निरर्थकम् सर्वतीर्थाश्रयो देवी पारङ्गुप्तं च वर्तते जपेन जयमनोति शरदफलमाप्नुयात् येन कर्म त्यजन् सर्वं स्थानानि च रमाणि च जपमेव सनं कुर्वन् येन कर्मफलप्रदम् संग्रामे रूपसङ्कटे vaktavya satyam satyam vadamyam Ativa Bhagavachitaya Shraddha Bhakti Udaya Cha Pravatamyamiram Devi Amama Sakande Nastike Nare Guru Gita Karachana Samsara Sagara Samudra Nekamantra Brahmadi Deva Muni Pujita Sita Mantra Daridra Dukkha Bhava Roga Vinasha Mantra Vande Mahavaya Ram Guru Raja Mantra Iti Shri Skanda Purane Uttarakande Swara Parvati Sambhade Guru Gita Samapta Charanar Paramastu Nityanandaya Gurave Shisha Samsara Harine Bhaktakaya Dehaya Namaste Chitsadatmane Nirvasanam Nirakaksham Savadosha Vivartitam Niralandam Nirantantam Nityanandam Namabhyam Nirmamam Nirankaram Samadostasmakansanam Samaduka Sakamadiram Avadutam Namabhyam Avinashiram Ammanam Ekavignaya Tatpatam Vintaragavaya Krodam Nityanandam Namabhyam Nam Deho Name Deho Jivanamamite Evam Vignaya Sadashtam Samasab Kalpanamantram Atmamukta Sanatanam Iti Vignaya Santruptam Nityanandam Namabhyam Yana Nidagna Karmanam Kama Sankalpa Vartitam Eo Pare Ainamdam Avadutam Namabhyam Kabhavene Vayo Yogi Sukham Bhogam Navanshati Yadrishala Vasandashtam Nityanandam Namabhyam Eva Ninda Prasansabhyam Tasya Vikriyate Manam Amakiram Amaram Avadutam Namabhyam Nityam Jagraravasayam Sapnavadyo Vatishtane Nityanandam Namabhyam Doesham Nasti Priyam Nasti Nasti Asya Shubha Shubham Veda Jnana Vinamdam Avadutam Namabhyam Jarapashati no yastu Jagapashanti Chimayam Nitya Yuktam Gunatitam Nityanandam Namabhyam Yogidarshanamatrena Avate Bhuvanadvayam Pavanam Jagamam Tirtam Avadutam Namabhyam Sarva Pujyam Sarapurnam Akandanam Davigram Nityanandam Namabhyam Nishkalam Nishriyam Shantam Nirmalam Paramamritam Ganesha Purivasinam Avadutam Namabhyam Yoga Purnam Tapamurti Prema Purnam Surashanam Jnana Purnam Kripamurti Nityanandam Namabhyam Durjana Sajjana Bhuyat Sajjana Shanti Mapnuyat Shanto Muchet Tapandevya Mukta Shanyan Vimochaye स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्ताम् न्यायेन मार्गेण ब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यम् लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी शाश्वतशालिनी देशोऽयं शुभरहितो ब्रह्मणः सन्तु निर्भयाः सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् दुर्गाणि सर्वभद्राणि पश्यतु सर्वकामानवन्दतु सर्वत्र नन्दतु अस्ति मात्रौ बीजेनो अस्तु स्वस्ति गोभ्यो जगते पुरुषेभ्यः विश्वां सुभूतां सुविरात्रं नोऽस्तु योगे दृश्येमसूर्याम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति करो सदा गुरु की करो सदा गुरु की प्यारे गुरु द्वार की आरती करो गुरु द्वार की आरती करो सदा गुरु की करो सदा गुरु की प्यारे गुरु द्वार की आरती करो गुरु द्वार की Nityananda Sadguru Data
Sadhgurnath Maharaj Ki Jai. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to our Sunday morning Satsang. This is post Gurudev's visit, a very dynamic experience. Was it 3 months? 3 months. Included the course and several intensives and lots of activity, lots of meditation, lots of darshan, and lots of company of the Guru. And lots of company of old friends, and all friends still here, and all of you out there. So it's a great day. It's a transition into the summer, and Gurudev is back in India, and he had to stop in Ganeshpuri, as many of you must have seen on Facebook. So I believe now he's back in Magod, and we're here. So the impact of the Guru's company is still with us, and hopefully continues to stay with us. When he left, he sat in his chair, and a few of us were here before he went to the airport, and he just said one thing. He said, there's a lot that goes on here in the ashram, but the main thing happens here in the meditation hall. So he said, make sure you come here every day and just have a conversation. Have a conversation with yourself, with the Guru, with God. And to me, that was that was very, very significant, and that's kind of the subject of my talk today. That conversation that we have, that continuous dialogue, because when it comes right down to it, what I think we all want is that kind of communion that we have, that we tend to have more easily in the Guru's presence. But we want to have that continuous connection, that continuous communion with the divine, so that we feel that and we sense that, and we're in the midst of that all the time. We have been studying the Yoga Sutras prior to Gurudev's arrival, and a lot during his stay here. So the Yoga Sutras sum everything up very neatly and say, when the mind is still, we're resting in essential nature. So that becomes very, very simple. And so the intention is that we should just become still. And in that stillness, we are having this conversation. The conversation can be more verbal than that. It can be more active. We can offer everything. And that is the idea, that everything should be offered. So in that stillness, we are offering. There's two parts to it, as you recall, because we've all been studying this, and you've been reading the Yoga Sutras, so you know there's two parts to the effort to become still. One is abhyasa, which is the attention, the mind is focused upon whatever object it might be, but Baba suggested that we should choose for the object our own self, the witness of everything that happens, our own essential being. And the speciality of the Guru is that he introduces us to ourself. So when he says, have a conversation here, come here and have a conversation, wherever you are, have the conversation. He's introducing us to ourselves, to God, so that conversation can be had. Because most people are not having that conversation. It's a great privilege and a rare thing to be introduced in that way, to receive Shaktipat and feel like you have a relationship that needs to be and wants to be, that you want to develop. And so there is a kind of a sense of duality, but I mean, that's what I experience, that there is a sort of intimacy, that there's a connection that you're nurturing, and we do this through mantra repetition. That conversation takes place through mantra, through the power of sound, through mantra diksha, the initiation from the Guru. So this conversation is being had and is being cultivated. So we have abhyasa, the practice. That's the one side, practice. So the effort to become still. And if we are still, the effort to remain still. And as Krishna says, when we become agitated, when the mind is restless, always continue to bring it back to the point of stillness, which is the self. Or we could say it's Krishna, Or we could say it's the Guru himself, because there's an equation, because there's really only one. So we have only one that we can meditate upon. And if we meditate on the self, it's automatically the others. Right? Correct. Okay. That means Shiva, Shakti, mantra, self. The individual is that one, even though there's the issue. We're not remembering that. We're not realizing that. So that's why the individual who thinks he's separate from God, which is the whole point of the Guru Gita, is for the individual to realize oneness. So then the individual needs to have this conversation, have this connection, using the mantra, using everything. So the other aspect of this two-part practice in order to become still is detachment. So what are we detaching from? So this is all from becoming crystal clear, right? So it's a great paradigm for sadhana if we can just remember this. And all the philosophies, Shaivism, Vedanta, Sankhya, the Bhagavad Gita, every philosophy comes down to these two things. And you'll see them mentioned over and over again. In my own experience, my own establishment of faith in the scriptures is if there's affirmation or confirmation from different sources saying the same thing. So this idea of practice and detachment keeps coming up. So we're detaching ourselves from thought, from feeling. We're just absorbing ourselves in that space of pure feeling and stillness. And everything that arises, we're letting that go. And that's meant to happen continuously. So we can do that in our practice. So Gurudev is encouraging us to practice, to have this inner dialogue, and to then offer everything in our lives to that conversation. So everything should be offered. Everything should be, we should be detached from everything. Well, this is a very tall order. So Patanjali says, over a long period of time, without interruption, continuously, with devotion, practice should be maintained. Because interruptions will allow obstacles to arise old patterns to arise, and then that inner dialogue or connection is broken. And we may even forget about it because it's so subtle, yet it's so near, but it's so subtle that it's easy for the mind to sort of cover it over, put a lot of dust on it, become distracted. But everything that we do arises from that. Everything that happens subsides into that. So it's all kind of a pulsation of this self-consciousness. And so this idea of dialogue and absorption in that and detachment are really, really good to keep in mind if we want to have clarity about what it is we're really meant to do. So this, you could see how this can seem like a big concept. Like in a way, we do have a overall commitment of surrender and commitment. We need that. We need a firm vow, a firm clarity about the goal, and we're moving forward in our life over time. But more than that, it's a moment-to-moment, intimate experience. Back to the conversation. So it's this internal feeling that can happen anytime, and especially in nature, we can see that happening. We're by ourselves and we see something wonderful, we hear something, and suddenly we're very present, we're very still, and everything is quiet. And in that moment, we're having darshan. This morning I was looking out the conference room window, and I saw a mother and a baby deer, and the baby deer was very small, only maybe a week old. And I looked and I saw them, and the little baby deer was just frolicking and following its mother, and they were running across the field. And just at that time, Jackie and Andrea had just come back from a walk, and they told me the rest of the story, because the deer disappeared behind the house, and so they were running along like that. And Jackie said the mother deer looked back, and they had to cross the orange tape, marking of the new meditation hall, so they had to get over that. So the mother looked back and then took a great leap, flew through the air, and went easily over the barricade there, which is only about this tall, but the deer is very small. So the little deer came up and just suddenly leaped into the air, and legs were like straight forward, straight back, like completely soaring through the air, and made it across. And she said it was just ecstatic, kind of this complete surrender into that moment, completely letting go. And if we could live our lives like that, wouldn't that be wonderful? If we could just be in the moment, not attached, not holding on to anything, just completely of surrender. And the surrender goes back to detachment, the vairagya. So we're letting go. And then we know that magic happens through us. We can play an instrument, we can sing a song, we can walk, we can talk, we can do what we have to do. Sometimes there's tension, sometimes there's anxiety, but there's that preparation before we're doing something, good preparation. And then in that moment, we're completely letting go. And that's so wonderful when that happens. So this can happen anywhere, anytime. So what I came across this, in thinking about this talk a few days ago, I came across this very fundamental sutra from the Guru Gita. It says, Karmana manasa vacha nityam aradare gurum dirga dandam namaskritya nilajo guru sanido. So it says, having bowed down, in the word, the sutra kara, the translator says, unabashedly, like without any reluctance, like the deer flying through the air, as if it were flying. Unabashedly, with a full-length prostration. So you just notice that connection. It's like a prostration, only through the air. In the Guru's presence, always worship the Guru with action, mind, and speech. So here's the conversation, here's the worship. So everything, it's repeated in all the scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita especially. Everything should be done with a sense of worship and offering. So this idea of offering, it's like an attitude. This attitude of bowing down unabashedly. So it's kind of two parts. First of all, having bowed down unabashedly with a full-length prostration in the Guru's presence. So that we could equate as meeting the Guru, or the Guru introducing us to our own self. And secondly, always worship the Guru with actions, mind, and speech. So there's three things we have here: actions, mind, and speech. That kind of covers a lot of territory. So this isn't just in meditation, it says all action, all thinking, all speech. And these are the areas in which we can become very much entangled in our ego, in our doubts, in our anxieties, in our self-consciousness, and get very tangled up, not in a full prostration. But he's saying here, offer these things. Nityam aradare gurum. So they're all offered. So all of our actions in the spirit of this detachment and this devotion, action, mind, and speech are offered. So that means everything that we do through the day. Now we might have to step back and think, wow, this is a lot. But here's this sort of paradigm that's given. And if we can do this, then we're very close to the goal. If this is happening all the time, imagine that, what would that be? What would that look like? It would be in a place where everything is feeling like consciousness, everything is scintillating. This experiences that we have from time to time, that would be continuous. If we were able to offer all actions, thoughts, and speech, if we were that aware. So we might have to do a little at a time. And in the Bhagavad Gita, and these nice little cards. There's sort of a two-step, it's like here's a little bit and here's a lot. And a little bit, you get a little bit, but it's accepted graciously. Krishna says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktya uparitam ashnami prayatatmana. He says, if you offer me with love and devotion, a fruit, a leaf, a flower, even water, I accept it. So it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be continuous. It's good if it is, but that's a very mature state. Whatever you do or eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, do as an offering unto me. So we can always offer, we can always surrender, we can dedicate everything. So this idea of having this kind of attitude, instead of it's what about me attitude, it's giving up and surrendering everything, offering it. So it's a very conscious, a very devotional, like we're in that intimate relationship continuously. And so the selfishness goes away and an opening occurs. Because the Yoga Sutras tell us quite clearly that the problem is fivefold. One is avidya, which is we are unaware of our true nature. The second one, which arises because of avidya, is asmita, which is ego. So ego is running the show because we're not aware of our true nature. Remember when we become still, we are aware of our true nature and what happens to ego. And we can observe for ourselves. Ego is probably not very present here right now for most of us. Right? We're just listening. We're just present. And in that presence, there's this awareness, and there's bliss, there's consciousness. But ego then comes in, and it keeps popping up. And when ego comes up, awareness goes down. And so there's this blockage that takes place. And so the primary means that Krishna recommends is doing everything selflessly as an offering. So it's mitigating the ego. And after ego, the third is raga and dvesha. We're attached to pleasure and we're averse to pain. So this is the natural, this is the sort of necessary ingredients for individual limited experience. And nothing wrong with it, and we need all those things. But if we can live our lives, the point is if we can live our lives in a sense of surrender and giving, instead of what about me, because by the what about me attitude is shrinking our state of being and limiting, and we're cut off from our true nature, cut off from our natural state of being. It's quite simple. But in the midst of everything, it's really hard to have that kind of attitude of complete surrender, complete like, what? That's crazy, you know? But if we are able to do that, and that's why it's called practice, that's why it takes a long time, etc. So we have raga and dvesha, which are our friends, our companions, which we think are our friends, but they're really our enemies. And they give rise to avidya, and they give rise to lust, anger, greed, jealousy, attachment, and any action that arises that is committed, or any thought or any word. We know what happens when those are in full bloom in our consciousness, that suddenly there's chaos and there's negativity and there's a feeling of contraction and there's anger and all these things. So those are meant to be mitigated, to be calmed. And so we offer everything freely in the state of giving instead of taking. There's a Detachment might remember where this line came to me. You surely took more than you gave, or you wouldn't be in this mess today. You remember that line? You surely took more than you gave, or you wouldn't be in this mess today. No? Okay. So we get ourselves in a big mess by taking more than we give. So Krishna's saying, telling us, Guru Gita is telling us something very basic. Give more than you take, and your life will be harmonious, and you'll be in communion with the self, which is everywhere. So it's like the magic bullet, or bad term, but just the magic formula. Give more than you take. But that sounds, from a perspective of the individual, that sounds like what'll happen to me. So that's why we have the Guru that tells us, keep doing this, keep doing this. And Krishna says the other end of the spectrum, one who is able to do this all the time, he is dear. He is most dear to me. She or he is most dear to me. Yoginam api sarvesham. Madgatenantaratmana shadavam bhajate yomam same yuktamo mataha. Of all yogis, the one who is filled with faith. So he's Shraddhavan. He has this complete faith. He's like the deer that's leaping through the air because he just saw his mother do it. He leaps freely. And he's so, it must be, well, to be that, 5-day-old deer and feel that freedom. And it was just delightful. You could just see the delight in his body. So, full of faith, his entire being given over to me. So the entire being is the entire being. So when we think, what is he talking about when he says entire being? Entire being would be actions, mind, and speech, right? The Guru Gita says, offer your actions, mind, and speech after having pranam yourself, pranam fully, unabashedly at the feet of the Guru. You're offering everything to me, as Krishna says. Same yuktamo mataha. His entire being given over to me, is the most intimately united with me and is the best of all. He's my favorite. Because he's reached the goal, and in essence, he is me. Because remember, there's really just ignorance of the self. There's really not two. There's this self, and when the mind becomes still, we're established in the self. So it's this whole kind of game of hide and seek in a sense. So when he says he is most intimately united with me and he is the best of all, because he's realized his oneness. So this kind of action, this kind of surrender, this attitude is, you see this recommended in all the scriptures, this idea of surrender. In the Yoga Sutras, we see very soon after all the different types of samadhi are shown, described, essentially tracing all experience that we have back to essential nature in a very sort of scientific, detailed. It sounds difficult. In a state of samadhi and doing this sort of, in a sense, like on your own, as an inner research. And at the end of that whole passage, Patanjali says, or Ishvara Pranidhan. It's like, whoa, I don't have to do all this. I can just surrender myself to God. Same thing. Shariram Havi is another example of the same thing. So we have Ishvara Pranidhan, surrender to the divine. And where is the divine? Within. So he's saying there is this divine principle within, and it's obvious although not mentioned, that Patanjali knows that we need the Guru in order to realize that. One of my favorite little dohas, the 2-line verses from Kabir, says, Mora Tora ki javari, bante banda sansar, dasa Kabir kyun bande, jako nama adar. He says, with the rope of mine and yours, samsara binds everyone. Why should Kabir be bound? He has taken shelter in the rest of God's name. So this rope binds us. But all the different sutras say, Ishvara Pranidhana, we're surrendering. We're this flat out namaskar. And so everything is given over in the spirit of sacrifice and generosity and giving. And even in Kashmir Shaivism, we see the same attitude arising. In the second chapter of the Shiva Sutras, it says, Shariram Havihi. The body is the offering. So again, this idea of wrong identification is simply offered. So we go back to the very beginning, we say abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is practice and vairagya is detachment or offering. So this offering here, in this case, in the Shiva Sutra's second chapter, Shariram Havihi, he's describing a yagna fire. The yagna is burning, and the yagna is the inner fire of yoga that's lit, and Krishna refers to this as well. The fire of yoga is burning in the heart of the yogi. What needs to happen is that he basically takes the limitation, takes the idea of individuality, wrong identification, and everything that goes with it. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is fear of death. So that is all offered. So mentally we visualize the fire, whatever arises. In fact, if we look at Spandakarikas, any part of Kashmir Shaivism, we see that the idea that everything is a pulsation, and that thought, feeling, and even our own being is all just arising from the fire, from consciousness, and it's subsiding back into consciousness. That this is all just a pulsation. That may be the advanced course, but it's the idea. It's arising. It's subsiding in consciousness anywhere. It's already in consciousness. It's being sustained in consciousness, and it's dissolving. And in the process of that, our true nature is concealed. So this idea of offering is there in the Shiva Sutras as well. This idea of the sacrifice. And so when Kabir says the world is bound, individuals are bound they're tied up by a rope. This is another concept from Kashmir Shaivism as well. The idea of being sort of lassoed and tied up. The feeling when we do things with a sense of ego and what's in it for me, there's a sense of bondage and limitation, contraction. So he says this rope of I and mine is binding everyone. And he says, why should Kabir be bound? I've taken the support of the divine name. So that which enables us to have this conversation is the name, is the mantra given by the Guru. So this conversation is sustained by the mantra Shakti. Nama Sankirtana Sadhana Paisope Jala Tila Pape Janmana Tarichi Nalage Sayasa Zave Vanantara Sukha Eto Gara Narayana. Tukaram says we take the help of the name, and it's the easiest path. The name is the fire blazing within us, that Shakti of the divine name. And it's burning up lifetimes of karma, lifetimes of impressions from actions that are done with selfishness. So you just take the divine name, take the mantra Shakti, and this fire begins to burn limitations. And so we're offering, you get the idea, it's just the whole idea of offering, and just the mantra is a practice, is a abhyasa, and we're offering to that. This idea of sacrifice and giving is also mentioned numerous times in the Bhagavad Gita. This is from the 3rd chapter, verse 9. And this is another reference to the idea of a fire ceremony or a yagna. So here he's talking about the fact that the entire universe, that the entire of nature is operating with a sense of yagna. Everything is done with a sense of yagna. So we see the animal. One of the reasons I think that we're so pleased and delighted by nature is it's all happening almost magically, and everything is being sacrificed into the next phase. Winter becomes spring, becomes summer, and it all is like evolving and changing, and the bird sits in the tree and soaks up the sunlight, and everything seems to be happening in a sense of yagna. So it says yagna artat karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhana tadartha karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So Krishna is talking to Arjuna about this very subject. And he says, O Arjuna, the world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of sacrifice. So it goes back to what the Yoga Sutras were talking about, right? So we have the stillness. We have the effort to stay there. And when we're not there, the next sutra is, if the mind is not still, we are identified with the thoughts. So then there's a sense of being bound by action not performed for the sake of sacrifice. So most of the action we perform, it may not be for the sake of sacrifice. But if we're able to cultivate this sense of giving and communion, then the yagna is happening within us, and we're trading our negativity and our ego, our bondage, for our inherent freedom. So it's a very good bargain. It's a very good arrangement. So the Guru has introduced us to God, and he says, have this conversation. Have this conversation. And the Guru Gita says, offer your actions, your mind, your thoughts, and your words to that. So that immediately makes everything more pure within us. We think twice before we say that thing, or before we do that thing. So immediately, if we're going to be in this relationship, our consciousness is telling us, you need to make some changes, you need to adjust things so that you are able to do pure action, and those pure actions can be offered to the divine. So he says the world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of sacrifice. So we see this. The whole world, the whole political system, just everything, the nature of this level of being is, we call it karma bhumi, the land of karma. So everyone is producing karma because they're performing action for selfish reasons. And it's not their fault, really. It's not our fault. But we can step out of it. A way is being offered here. He says, do thou, therefore, O son of Kunti, perform action for that sake alone, for the yagna sake alone, free from all attachments. So it's quite an amazing element here it's so central in the idea of practice. Swami Chinmayananda talks about this sutra, and first here's his translation. The world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of sacrifice. Do thou, O son of Kunti, perform action for that sake alone, free from all attachment. So free from attachment, we're moving back to the beginning there, free from attachment, that's vairagya, and then abhyas is focusing on the converse. A very excellent paragraph on this sutra. It says, every action does not bring about bondages upon the doer. So every action does not bring about bondages. That's encouraging, right? It's only unintelligent activities that thicken the impressions in the mind. So this kind of brings Gurudev to mind. He needs to be smart, use your discrimination, be present, be aware at all times. And thus successfully building a thick and impenetrable wall between the ego center and the unlimited divine spark of life in us. I'll repeat that. So remember the five kleshas: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So we can draw a line between the self, the Atman, which would be to the right of all those people, avidya, asmita, raga. So ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, fear of death. Okay, over here is the self. I think you get the idea. Or more internally, the most internal, the only subject in the entire universe is the self. The only subject. And that is the same as the Guru, the same as God. So that has sort of a wall around it in the individual bound soul, in a sense, as it were. So he says the unintelligent activities that thicken the impressions in the mind. So we don't want those impressions to be thickened. We want them to be thinned. They are thinned by unselfish action, by pure action, and by, most of all, by mantra and by meditation. And thus successfully, so this is ironically saying there's a wall that's built between the self and the individual, where the self is you get it. And thus successfully building a thick and impenetrable wall between the ego center and unlimited divine spark of life within us. Clear? Okay. Every action motivated by egocentric desires thickens this veil and permits not even a single ray of the essential divinity to peep through it, to illumine the life in us. Swami Chinmayananda is quite dramatic. There's if you go to a site called Shloka, go to Guru Gita and Bhagavad Gita, and there's every sutra is translated, and it's a nice commentary there. And some, if you look below, there's like a little 5-minute talk by Swami Chinmayananda on those sutras. So you might check that out. Not even a single ray of the essential divinity to peep through it, to illumine the life within us. According to the traditional translation, all activities other than the yagna activities will bring about vasana bondages. So we haven't mentioned vasanas yet, but we're familiar with that as long as there's action that has done with attachment, impressions are made. And those impressions leave, it's a mark that's sort of got life in it that will then create new actions or create new impressions that will then encourage more karma, more limited experience. And like he says, thicken this veil between the mind, individual, and true nature. So this whole process, you still with me? The whole process is designed to thin that veil and to burn it, as it were, in meditation, in chanting. All these practices are meant to purify the individuality so that the light of consciousness can, as he says, a single ray of the essential divinity to peep through it. So then as more light comes into the room, then the darkness is dispelled. According to, yes, yagna here means only any self-sacrificing work undertaken in the spirit of self-dedication. So this is the recommendation that we should do. And in a life that's lived in that way is one of offering, one of purity, and one of success. If we can live that life, we are averting disaster in a sense. Because we don't want our life to go by and think, I didn't realize anything, I didn't know anything, I didn't learn anything, I didn't understand myself, I wasn't able to repeat the mantra at the end of my life. There's another poem from Kabir that speaks about this sort of despair that he's trying to avert by encouraging us to do sadhana, to make this kind of effort. He says, Pita gaye, dina bhajana binare, bala vasta kila gavai, jabayo vana tabamana danare, pita gaye, dina bhajana binare, lahe karanam mula gavo gavayo, ajnana nagahi, manaki trishnare, bita gaye, dina bhajana binare, kahata kabira, suno bai sadho, para uttara gaye, santa janare, bita gaye, dina bhajana binare. So this is a very sort of sober bhajan from Kabir. He says, time has passed without worship. Like, Vita Gaye Dina Bhajana Binare. Time keeps passing and you're not worshiping God. You're not having this conversation Gurudev was recommending. He did all those things. We didn't know, we didn't know. And if a person is very, very fortunate, they'll have a spiritual experience at a young age and begin this journey. But generally, in childhood, you spend your time playing and jumping. And then in youth, he's talking about the passage of time. In your youth, you worship name and fame. So we're busy. We're very, very busy. So we didn't have time to chant God's name, to do spiritual practice. So time has gone by. So you might be in this category. Maybe you're still in your youth, or you're in middle age. Like he says, in middle age, you worship name and fame. He says, now you are old. This applies to many of us. Now you are old, you forgot your purpose. This purpose, you knew the purpose. You knew you were meant to do this process of sadhana and to know your true nature, to do abhyasa and vairagya, to do action selflessly, to serve and to give more than you took. But your desire nature continues. Purpose, but the desires are still there. Even as an old person, you still have these desires. It's not that when you get old that your desires are gone. They're still there because these vasanas have been strengthened over this time with selfishness and the lack of a sense of sacrifice and giving. Kabir says, "O brother, sadhu, they cross over who take refuge in the saints, lovers of God." Sadhgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai.
Rama Krishna Hare Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hare Mukunda Murari Panduranga 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 Hare Panduranga 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 Hare Rama Krishna Hare Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hare Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga Hari. Ram Krishna Hari, Mukunda Murari, Ram Krishna. Ram Krishna Hari, Mukunda Murari, Ram Krishna. Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga Hari. Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga Hari. Ram Krishna Hari, Mukunda Murari, Ram Krishna Hari. Ram Krishna Hari, Mukunda Murari, Ram Krishna. Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga Hari. Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga Hari. Ram Krishna Hari, Mukunda Murari, Ram Krishna. 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 Panduranga, Panduranga, Panduranga. गुरु भजनाचा महिमा रखले आगमा निगमसी अनुभव छे जानत छे गुरु पर छे राय वासी धन्य धन्य प्रदक्षिणा सद्गुरु राया चीला परसुरवर विमान उतराया ची प्रदक्षिणा करणी देह भावे वाइला प्रदक्षिणा करणी देह भावे वाइला श्रीरंग विठ्ठल पूजे उभराइला धन्य धन्य प्रदक्षिणा सद्गुरु राया चीला वरसुरवर विमान उतराया ची धन्य धन्य प्रदक्षिणा सद्गुरु राया चीला वरसुरवर विमान उतराया ची धन्य धन्य सद्गुरु राया चीला वरसुरवर विमान उतराया ची ज्योतसे ज्योता जगाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योता जगाव मेरा अंधार मेरा मिटाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योता जगाव हे योगेश्वर हे ज्ञानेश्वर हे योगेश्वर हे ज्ञानेश्वर हे सर्वेश्वर हे परमेश्वर हे सर्वेश्वर हे परमेश्वर निज कृपा बरसाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव मेरा अंतर मेरा मिटाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव हम बालक ते द्वार पे आए हम बालक ते द्वार पे आए मांगल दरस दिखाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव मेरा अंतर मेरा मिटाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव शीश झुकाय करें तेरी आरती शीश झुकाय करें तेरी आरती प्रेम सुरा बरसाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव मेरा अंतर मेरा मिटाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव अंतर में युग युग से सोए अंतर में युग युग से सोए चित्त शक्ति को जगाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव मेरा अंतर मेरा मिटाव सद्गुरु ज्योतसे ज्योत जगाव साची ज्योत जगे हृदय में साची ज्योत जगे हृदय में पिता त्वमेव त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव Thank you all for joining us for our Sunday morning satsang here. Those of you in person and also via live stream. It's wonderful to connect in this way and to have the continuity and to continue the conversation. So coming up this week, we begin our Guru Purnima week of celebrations. So tomorrow is a reminder to everyone. You'll be receiving the Guru Purnima intensive link for those of you who have registered. That'll come out tomorrow morning before 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time. And then the link is valid for about the next 10 days to 2 weeks, so you can watch it at your convenience. And then on Wednesday here at the ashram, we will have our Guru Purnima celebration in the evening. So we'll start at 5:30 with evening arati, followed by 6 p.m. a Paduka Puja here in the temple to Bhagawan and to Baba. And then we'll have Om Namah Bhagavate, Muktanandaya, some chanting and kirtan following that. And then we'll all go down for evening dinner prasad down at Namaste. So that's on Wednesday evening from... and then we'll continue with our Sunday morning satsangs next weekend and then for the rest of July. And we'll have that here in the temple. So for those of you who are local and here in person, we'll have that here in the temple. And I think that's all for today. So thank you all. Sadhguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai.